Before the flood came, before the giants walked, before the ground itself grew heavy with what it could not hold, there were daughters. Not sons, not the towering, war-making offspring the old texts obsess over. Daughters, and almost no one asks about them. The Book of Enoch tells us this. 200 watchers, angels bound to obedience, descended onto the summit of Mount Hermon and swore an oath together not to fall alone. They took human wives. They fathered children who grew tall as cedars and hungry as wolves, children the earth could not feed. That much people remember. The giants, the violence, the flood that came to wash it all away. But hidden in the margins of that ancient account is a quieter, stranger detail, one most retellings skip entirely. The text does not only speak of monstrous sons, it speaks of daughters born from that same forbidden union. And what happened to them, what they became, what was done to them, what they may have carried forward, is a silence historians have never fully explained. Most assume the story of the Watchers is a story about male power, angels overstepping, giants destroying, God punishing, a clean, masculine tragedy. But look closer at the oldest fragments, the Dead Sea Scroll remnants, the Ethiopian text preserved when the West discarded it, and a different shape emerges. The daughters were not incidental. They were named among the corrupted, and some traditions whisper that it was not only violence the Watchers brought down from heaven, it was knowledge, secrets given first, some say, to the women. Picture Mount Hermon before any of it happened. Just stone and wind and a silence so old it had never been broken by a human voice. The peak sat wrapped in cloud most days, cold enough to hold snow even when the valleys below burned under summer sun. It was chosen, the text says, precisely because it was far from every human settlement, a place where 200 beings could stand together and speak a thing that could not be unspoken. Their leader was called Shemi Hazar. He gathered the others at the summit, and even in the old language, you can feel his hesitation before he speaks. If we do this, he says, I fear I alone will bear the weight of a great sin. The others do not comfort him. They do not argue against the plan. Instead, 200 voices answer as one vow, binding each of them to the others, so that no single angel could turn back without breaking faith with all the rest. Let us all swear an oath, they say, and bind ourselves by mutual curses, that none of us turn back from this council until we have done this deed. The wind on the mountain does not answer them, it simply stops. The text does not say this outright, but every dramatization of this moment imagines the same thing, a held breath in the world itself, as though creation understood, before the men who wrote it down ever could, that something irreversible had just been decided. A vow spoken together is easier to keep and harder to escape than a vow spoken alone. They descended from the mountain into the villages below. This is where the story becomes intimate, almost domestic angels appearing not as thunder and fire, but as strangers, tall, beautiful, unfamiliar in a way that unsettled and drew people in at once. Imagine a young woman at a well outside her village, drawing water in the low light of early evening. A man approaches, if man is even the right word, with eyes that seem to hold more years than any human face could carry. He does not threaten her. He speaks softly, almost gently. Do not be afraid, he says. I have crossed a great distance to find you. She should run. Every instinct in her, if she is like any woman in any era, should tell her to run. But there is a pull to him that fear cannot override the same pull. Perhaps that Eve felt at another garden, at another tree, when something forbidden promised more than obedience ever had. She does not run. What is offered gently is not always what is given freely. The unions multiplied across the land, angel and woman, heaven bending down into flesh, and from them came children unlike anything the earth had produced. The old text says they grew at an unnatural pace, reaching towering heights within years, not decades. Some accounts place them at 300 cubits tall, an exaggeration meant to convey not literal measurement, but the feeling of something monstrously wrong, a creation the world had no room for. And they were hungry, not with ordinary hunger. The text says that when human food ran out, the giants turned first on animals, then on each other, and finally on the people who had, in some cases, been their own mothers. Picture a mother standing in a doorway, watching her child grown now, grown wrong, walked toward the fields where the last of the grain still stood. She had held this child once, small enough to fit against her chest. Now she watches him from a distance she cannot close, because to come closer is to risk everything. "You are not what I prayed for," she whispers, too quiet for him to hear, or perhaps too afraid to let him. He does not turn back to look at her. There is a particular grief reserved for mothers who no longer recognize what they raised. The chaos spread. Crops failed under the giant's hunger. Villages that had once traded peacefully now bolted their doors at dusk. And it was here, amid the wreckage of ordinary life, that the Watchers did something the text treats as a second transgression, arguably worse than the first. They began to teach. Azazel, one of the leaders among the fallen, taught men how to forge weapons, swords, breastplates, shields, turning the raw metal of the earth into instruments built for one purpose. Other Watchers taught the cutting of roots, the reading of stars, the casting of spells, the interpretation of omens. Knowledge that, in human hands too soon, became less a gift than a wound. And this is the detail almost no dramatization lingers on. Some of that knowledge, the enchantments, the cosmetics, the arts of adornment and seduction, the text obliquely references, was taught specifically to women. Not because women were lesser vessels for it, because they were the ones left standing closest to the Watchers, bound to them by marriage, by children, by a proximity no man in the villages shared. The daughters born of these unions, then, did not simply inherit height or strength the way their brothers did. Some traditions suggest they inherited something else, knowledge planted early, absorbed the way a child absorbs a mother tongue before she understands what she is even saying. A generation of women who came into the world already fluent in secrets heaven had never meant for the ground below. What is taught before a child can question it becomes indistinguishable from instinct. The cry of the earth reached heaven before the giants did. The text says the ground itself, soaked in blood and stripped of grain, brought the accusation of those who had been destroyed up before God's throne. 4 archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and one more looked down from above and saw what remained. Watch this moment slow down. Everything up to now has felt like it was gathering force, gaining speed, the way water gains speed as it nears a fall. And here, at the edge, it stops. Gabriel is sent first not to punish, but to provoke a war among the giants, turning them against one another so that they might destroy what they had themselves become. Raphael is sent to bind Azazel, dragging him into darkness beneath jagged rocks, covering his face so he could never again see light. And Michael is given the hardest task of all. He is sent to Shemihaza. The two of them stand at last where it began, the summit of Hermon, cold and stripped of any illusion of privacy from the sky above. Michael does not raise his voice. "You were bound to obey," he says, "and you chose to be bound to each other instead." Shemihaza does not deny it. There is nothing left to deny. "I knew," he says, "what the ending would be. I feared it before I ever descended, and still I descended." That single line, spoken by the very being who first said, "On this same mountain, I fear I alone will bear the weight of a great sin," is the turning point of the entire account. Not the flood, not the giants' war. This confession, a being who saw the ending clearly and walked toward it anyway, not out of ignorance, but out of the terrible human, or in this case, angelic instinct, to belong to something larger than the consequence. He is bound, cast into darkness beneath the earth to await final judgment, chained not for eternity in the immediate sense, but for an age held until a reckoning still to come. The text is precise about this detail in a way that unsettles more than it comforts. The punishment is not the end of the story, it is a pause. The flood follows, the giants perish, some traditions say, their bodies destroyed, while their spirits remain restless, disembodied, wandering the earth as the origin of what later generations would come to call demons. Not myths invented from nothing, echoes, the old texts imply, of something that once had flesh and lost it. And the daughters, the ones the text mentions almost in passing, almost as an afterthought to the sons who get all the drama, vanish from the record entirely at exactly this point. No trial, no naming, no fate recorded. They simply disappear from the page, the way so many women in ancient texts disappear the moment the men around them stop needing their part of the story told. A story that forgets its daughters has not finished being told. It has only stopped being written down. What this account is really wrestling with is not giants or flying beings or ancient warfare. It is the far older, far more uncomfortable question of what happens when boundaries, the ones meant to separate heaven from earth, restraint from desire, knowledge from readiness, are crossed not by force, but by mutual consent. Shemaiah was not deceived. The Watchers were not tricked into their oath. They chose it together, fully aware of the cost, because the pull toward belonging, toward being part of something irreversible, proved stronger than the fear of what it would become. That is not a story about monsters. That is a story about us. Every generation faces its own version of that mountain, a moment where a group of people, bound by loyalty or love or ambition, swears itself to a choice it can already sense is wrong, and does it anyway, because turning back alone feels like the greater failure. The daughters of that story, erased from the page, remind us of something else too, that the consequences of a shared decision rarely fall evenly. Someone always carries more of the weight, more of the silence, more of the disappearance, and history rarely remembers to ask who. You may never stand on a mountain and swear an oath with 200 others, but you have stood, more than once, at your own version of Hermon, a decision you sensed was wrong before you made it, made easier only because others were making it alongside you. A relationship you knew would cost you, a compromise dressed up as belonging, a silence you kept because breaking it would mean standing alone. The question the Watcher's story leaves for you is not whether you have ever been tempted. Everyone has stood at that well in the evening light. The question is whether you can hear, in the quiet before you decide, the version of yourself that already knows how the story ends, and choose, even now, to turn back down the mountain instead of up it. Because the ground remembers what is done upon it, long after the ones who did it have gone silent. And somewhere in that old unfinished account, a daughter is still waiting for someone to ask what became of her.